Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, we'll start the Tajweed workshop. All brothers can make their way to the main hall. Jazakullahu Khairun. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, so we had a brief break yesterday because it was Friday and because we needed time for rest. There was a brief break in the Tajweed workshop. For those who weren't here, or just as a reminder for those that were here, alhamdulillah, on Thursday what we discussed was the makharij of the huruf, the Arabic alphabet. Does anyone remember how many specific number of makharij there are? 17. There are 17 makharij. In the PowerPoint, it was listed in such a way that it will be easier to digest. But in the books, there are 17 makharij for the 29 huruf in the Arabic alphabet. And we went over all of them, alhamdulillah. We went over lahin jali and lahin khafi, the major mistake and the minor mistake. Just as a show of hands, can anyone give me an example of a major mistake? Just a rule, you don't have to give me an example. If anyone can remember just one major mistake. Replacing a letter for another, mashallah. Adding a letter and removing a letter. So replacing a letter, adding a letter, and removing a letter. Does anyone know one more? Harakat. Harakat and? There's a harakat and there's one more, the sakanat, the sukuns, sakins. So changing the harakat. So this is obviously adding or replacing the harakat, maybe even deleting a haraka, putting a sukun where there's no sukun. These are all major mistakes. Right? If the letters are a major mistake, then of course the words are also a major mistake. Adding, deleting, and replacing a word for another word, that's also a major mistake. Lahin khafi, can anyone give me an example of or not example, just a rule? Or yeah, there's actually only examples for a minor mistake. The lam and the ra. When pronouncing the lam, it's supposed to be a full mouth, instead it's pronounced empty mouth, or the ra, when it's supposed to be pronounced empty mouth, one pronounces a full mouth. So these are examples of the major and minor mistakes. Fatha, kasr, the vowels, the teeth, the makharij. So I understand there are a lot of makharij, and it is a lot to digest in one class. And I did go over it fairly fast. We didn't get a chance to go over them. The preferred method is obviously we should memorize each makhraj word for word, exactly how the definition is, and try to not memorize it in our own words, because when we memorize it in the actual words, then it's easier to implement. So inshallah, I'm still trying to figure out how to distribute it. Well, my plan was that I wanted to make a document with all of the makharij, and maybe I can try passing it out, or possibly email the makharij. I personally do not have this PowerPoint. This is Dar Islam's PowerPoint. But inshallah, we'll try to figure something out with the makharij. And of course, we realized from this that we do need a teacher. With Tajweed, it doesn't suffice for just reading. So Tajweed is such a subject that it's not a written subject. You know what I mean? You know, especially when I'm a biology student. So I know that in biology and physiology and these type of subjects, one can still self-study these subjects, meaning that one can understand from the book. Obviously, it helps to have a teacher, but you can learn from the book still. With Tajweed, it's very practical. You actually need a teacher for Tajweed. Tajweed is not You cannot read it and figure it out yourself. Tajweed is something that you need a teacher to demonstrate how the word sounds. You cannot hear a sound from paper. You cannot reproduce a sound. So that's why we need a teacher when we're trying to learn Tajweed. So I recommend, encourage, and advocate for all of us to have a teacher for Tajweed. Just having the words themselves, not too much help. There is some help to understand how the letters come about, but we should still have a teacher for all the letters and just reciting to one another, to the teacher, inshallah. So the plan for today is the makharij. We will go over it briefly in terms of makharij when we're doing the recitation of the surahs. Okay, so I mentioned this yesterday, or 2 days ago, I'm sorry. I mentioned this 2 days ago about common mistakes. Why are there common mistakes? Because some letters, they come from the same makhraj. Maybe we remember that ta and ta. This is when the tip of the tongue touches the gums of the central incisors. When it touches the gums of the thanaya ulya. This is how ta, ta, and there's one more letter. Does anyone know the other letter? There's ta and ta. There's one more letter that comes from this makhraj. Which one? No. Ta, ta, and dal. Dal. Ta, ta, and dal. They all come from the same makhraj. Right? The dal has the qalqala sound. Ta and ta, the difference is ta is empty mouth, ta is full mouth. So you can see from here. Oops, sorry. Let me put this in. You can see ta and ta, these are common mistakes. Why? Because they come from the same makhraj. Letters that come from the same makhraj, sometimes they get blended in, and we cannot tell the difference. But like how he said yesterday, that because of these differences, it can change the meaning as well. Like qa and ka. Over here, this is towards the end, qa and ka. Tha, sin, and sad. So the tha and sin, sometimes we mistaken that tha is when the tongue touches the edge of the thanaya ulya, the upper central incisors, when the tip of the tongue touches this. This is tha. Sin and sad. Sin and sad, very easy, because sin and sad, the difference is, one is full mouth, one is empty mouth. Ha and ha, we went over this, how to tell the difference. Right? Ha is the harder one. Ha is very easy, because this is also in the English language. The H, when the H makes a sound, usually it's a ha sound. Right? The small ha. You can feel it from your chest. Ha. Like in Allah, Allah, that ha sound, that comes from the chest, the lower portion of the throat. Ha is from the middle portion of the throat. Kha and ghain, again from the same portion, the top portion of the throat. Ghain, what was the easier way to say this? It's the gargling sound. When we're gargling water in our mouth, we're making the ghain sound. Whether unconsciously or consciously we realize it, the ghain is the gargling sound. But when you actually make the sound with the voice box, this becomes gha, al. And then there's dal and dad. Anyone remember the makhraj of dad? Ji. So the side of the tongue, it touches the gums of the premolars and the molars. And this is one of the hardest letters to pronounce in the Arabic language. Dad. It creates a bubbling sound. You can do left, right. Usually the right side is harder, or you can do both. I personally never met anyone who can do both. It's still possible, but usually the left side is the easier one. Dad. Dhal, dha, and za. Usually dha and za are mixed up a lot. Right? Dhal is a little bit easier because it's empty mouth. The empty mouth letters are a little easier to pronounce. It's usually the full mouth letters that we sometimes get mistaken with. So dha is just a full mouth letter of dhal. Dha, adh. Everyone can repeat after me. Adh. And there's adh. 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 And then there's az. So dha and za are different letters. Az and adh are different letters. Ain and a. Where this becomes very apparent is in the Mu'awwidhatayn, in Surah An-Nas and Surah Al-Falaq. Because when these surahs start, there's a hamza and an ayn right next to each other. And this is the hardest, very hard to say. Why? Because you start from the bottom of your throat and then you go to the top portion of your throat, right? And then immediately you go to your tongue. Qul a, there's a, and then there's u. So it's very hard. A'u. Sometimes what happens is we mesh the letters together. Qul a'udhu, a'udhu. Now I can't even hear if there's a hamza in there. All I can hear is the ayn. But we have to give justice to each letter of the Arabic alphabet. There's a reason for each one, and if each one is mentioned. قُلْ أَعُوذُ قُلْ أَعُوذُ. If everyone can repeat after me. قُلْ أَعُوذُ. It's okay to read a little bit slower as well. There's some people try to read fast and you don't have to do this, right? There's no reason to read this fast. قُلْ أَعُوذُ. And what I mean by you go immediately to the tongue is we go to the val. You start from here, then you go here, then you go all the way up here. This is how it works when you're pronouncing letters. You go all over your mouth, and then you go into your throat, you go to the back of your palate, then you use your nose. So you have to be very careful about each letter you're reciting. Okay, now we're going to get into some sifat. Sifat are qualities of letters. Some letters have specific qualities. We talked about the makharij, but each letter has its own quality as well. Some letters have more than one quality. So the first quality we're going to talk about in the letters, all of the letters, they have different branches in terms of these qualities. And every letter has a quality. So from the first quality is whether a letter is going to be read full mouth or empty mouth. Now set the record straight. Which letters are read full mouth? Which letters are read empty mouth? Now these letters are divided into two. The first one is called musta'liya letters. We should try to remember this word, musta'liya. For those that are taking note, musta'liya I wrote it in Arabic and in English. For those who are able to write in Arabic, they can write the Arabic. If those who wish to write it, the transliteration, the English is also there. Musta'liya. Musta'liya comes from ala ya'lu, means to be big. So musta'liya means something that is heavy in the science of Tajweed. So there's a very easy way to remember the letters. There's a total of 7 letters. 7 letters that unconditionally these letters will be read with a full mouth. Unconditionally. These 7 letters. Kha. If everyone could repeat after me. Kha, Sad, Dad, Ghain, Ta, Qaf, and Dha. Now the easier way to remember this is Khussa Daghtin Qidh. Everyone repeat, Khussa Daghtin Qidh. Yeah. So the letters themselves, while you're saying this, it's just for remembering purposes, right? There's different ways. I remember when I was studying the nerves of the brain, there's like a really interesting way of memorizing all of the nerves, right? There's 10 of them. Actually, there's 13, and there's a way to remember them. It's called a mnemonic device. So this is in the Arabic language. This is how we remember the 7 letters of the musta'liya letters. So khussa daghtin qid. So just like how in qalqala letters is qutubu jad, right? And then there's also different types of letters. To memorize them, this is the way that the scholars have presented. Right? This is not something I came up with. This came up like centuries ago. This is how they remember. Khussa daghtin qid. Every other letter in the Arabic language is going to be pronounced lightly. Every other letter, they're called the mustaf'ila letters. These are the light letters. Heavy letters, 7 letters. Khus, kha, sad, dad, ghain, ta, qa, and qaf, and dha. 7 letters. Khussa daghtin qidh. Khalas. Those are the heavy letters. Now we go to the light letters. Every other letter is going to be pronounced lightly. Ba, it's not going to be ba. There's no such thing as ba, like in ball. It's ba, ta, tha, ja, ha. And kha is going to be a full mouth letter. So we should try to make this exercise. Go through all the letters of the alphabet. Is this a heavy letter? Ask yourself, is this a heavy letter? Is it one of those 7 letters? It's not one of those 7 letters. It's going to be empty mouth then. But the empty mouth letters have exceptions, conditions. These are the exceptions of these letters. And these are 3 letters, alif, lam, and ra. And we know this. I went over this before too with lam. Right? This is a lahn khafi. If you remember, lam, when sometimes it's pronounced heavy, sometimes it's pronounced light. Right? So this is the middle category. If you were to make a Venn diagram, the musta'liya and mustaf'ila letters, some are heavy, some are light, then in the middle there's going to be alif, lam, and ra. Because these letters are sometimes on this side, sometimes on that side, depending upon the condition, the ahwal around the word, around the letter. The siyaq, the context. So alif, lam, and ra are the exceptions. So khussa daghtin qidh, 7 letters, musta'liya. Mustaf'ila is every other letter except 3, alif, lam, and ra. This is just a little chart that it was originally full of words. I wanted to make it a little bit easier for to understand, so we can make this chart in our mind as well. Okay, so these are just examples of those letters with these are the musta'liya letters. So if everyone can repeat after me. Khabirun. No, it's not going to be khabirun. Not khabirun. It's khabirun. Salaha. Daraba. Ghayri. Taba'a. Qadama. Now, one thing we need to realize is that the highlighted letters, the letters that are in red, those are the musta'liya letters, but the other letters are the mustaf'ila letters. So that means that you have to switch off. You can't say taba'a. It's like, no, it's too hard for me. I start with heavy and then I have to go to empty mouth, then I have to go back to heavy, then I have to go. This is how the letters are. You have to give due justice to each one. So you say ta and then ba'a. Taba'a. Qadama. ظلم مطمئن عظيم بالحق. Now this is a hard letter. Why? Because there's two very hard letters to pronounce back to back. فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ قَصَصْنَا. Now we can't say qasas or qasas. You have to say qasas, because it's a sad and then a sad. Qasasna siratim mustaqim ghayril maghdubi. The rule of alif. So we talked about the three exceptions. What were the three exceptions from mustaf'ila letters? Alif, lam, and ra. Now the first one is going to be the alif. Now there are two rules with the alif. Alif is very simple. Sometimes I feel like sometimes it doesn't need to be mentioned because it's so obvious, but the rules are mentioned in the books of Tajweed. Two rules. The first one is if before the alif there is a letter that is read full mouth, the alif will be read full mouth. Now, who remembers the makhraj of alif? The emptiness of the mouth. Alif is the emptiness of the mouth, jawful fam. So alif does not have a defined makhraj. Hamza does. Hamza is from the bottom portion of the throat where ha comes from. But alif is very general. It's just from the emptiness of the mouth. Why? Because alif doesn't have a sound. Alif is the continuation of a sound. When there's a fatha before alif, then the alif sound is that stretching sound is the alif sound. Now for example, if before the alif there's a letter that is read full mouth. Now what are the letters that are read full mouth? We just talked about them. There's 7. Khussa daqtin qid. Right? These are the 7 letters. If at any time you see 7 of these letters before an alif, the alif will also be pronounced full mouth. And this is kind of obvious. Example is qala. So over here the alif is, you can't really tell the alif is full mouth because the alif doesn't have a sound. The qaf is what you're paying attention for. But there's very minute rules. So qala. The other one is if before the alif there's a letter that is read empty mouth, the alif will be read empty mouth. For example is zala. For example is jala, bala. That the alif is pronounced empty mouth over there. Very simple. The first one was alif. Now we're going to go to the lam. Let me just do some examples. Rule of lam in the word Allah. We went over the rule of lam as well. First one is if before the lam in the word Allah, very specific, just the lafzullah, just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just Allah, that word. Nothing else in the Arabic language does this rule apply to. Just Allah, the word Allah. So if before lam in the word Allah there appears a fatha or dhamma, then it will be read full mouth. And if there appears a kasra, then it will be read empty mouth. Very simple. So alif and lam are very easy. Now the word Allah, so there's Allah, there's Rasulullah. You don't say Rasulullah. You don't say Rasulullah. You say Rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Now the example for kasra. Lillah. Alhamdulillahi. Bismillahi. Lam is again very simple. If before the lam in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the name lafzullah, if there's a fatha or a dhamma before it, full mouth. There's a kasra before it, empty mouth. Now one thing I want to mention is it's very easy to remember this right now because we're actually in class. But try to repeat it to yourself even after class, maybe even have it written down. Because right now we'll remember it, but after the class is done, maybe after a couple hours, we're sure to forget. And I made this mistake a lot of times. We're sure to forget. We think we know it now, but then we forget it later. So try to repeat this after, over and over. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, the lam before it, if there's a fatha or dhamma, it's going to be pronounced full mouth. If there's a kasra before it, it's going to be empty mouth. Same rule applies for the alif. Now ra is where it gets a little bit more technical. Ra is very, very technical in that there are 3 scenarios with the ra. 3 scenarios. Okay, so there are 3 types. So the goal I had for today was I want to at least just finish the ra for today. So before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a kasra before it. Ji lillahi. Ji. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is always going to have a fatha. It says Allah, or so the lam. So there's always going to be, if you notice in all of these examples, there's always going to be a fatha. Over here there's a fatha, fatha. You have to look at the letter immediately before it. So over here is hasbiya. So there's a fatha right here. Hasbiyallahu. So over here there's billahi maga. So over here there's a fatha. Of course there's a fatha here, but then look at the letter before it that has a haraka on it. So this one has a kasra right here, a zair. Billahi. Qulillahumma. So this is qulillah. Qulillahumma. Bi-ayatillahi. Bismillahi. Min dunillahi. And over here as well. Lillahi. So these all have kasras before it. Now ra over here. So the first one is ra with a vowel. That ra which carries a haraka. It has either a fatha, a kasra, or a dhamma. This is the first condition. This is the first scenario that we look at. So the ra is going to be divided into 3. First one is if the ra has a mutaharrik, as it's said in the Arabic language, if it has a fatha, kasra, dhamma on it. Second category is if the ra has a sakin on it. A ra sakin in Arabic is ra sakin ma qabl mutaharrik, which means that there's a ra sakin, a ra which is sakin, which is preceded by a letter with a vowel on it. So there's ra with a vowel. Then there's a ra with a sakin. Before it, there's the letter with a vowel. Is everyone understanding? Does that make sense? Ra with a sakin. And then before it, there's a letter with a fatha, kasra, or dhamma. We're going to go over some examples soon, just to get the theory behind. And the third one is ra sakin, sakin ma qabl mutaharrik. This is a little bit more confusing. We're going to get to this as well. There's a ra sakin, which is preceded by another letter with a sakin, and then that is also preceded by a letter with a vowel. This is very specific scenarios, meaning that when you stop on a word, when you stop on something, right? There's khabirun, but then when you stop on it, inna Allah alimun, you say khabir. Now the ra has a sakin, you stopped on it. And then there's also a letter, the ya, that ya also has a sakin. And then there's a ba, that has the kasra on it. So that's that specific scenario. So 3 types. The ra itself has a vowel. The ra has a sakin, before it is a letter with a vowel. Or the ra has a sakin, the letter before it also has a sakin, and the letter before that has a haraka. Fatha, kasra, dhamma. We're going to go over the details of each one. First one, if the ra, this is a very simple one, just like alif and lam. If the ra has a fatha or a dhamma on it, this is the first one with the haraka. Fatha, kasra, dhamma. So if the ra has a fatha or a dhamma on it, it will be read full mouth. If it has a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. The letter itself has a vowel on it. So it has a fatha or a dhamma, it will be read full mouth. Like Rabbana, Rubama, Amara, Kafaru, Bihijaratin, Radiyatun. And going down over here, there's also Tayran, Sururun, Ajrun. And then the kasra will also have, there's no examples for the kasra, nothing's coming to my mind right now. But if the ra has a kasra on top of it, it will be read empty mouth. Number 2. So number 2 was, the first one was the ra had a, so the first one was the ra had a mutaharrik, right? It has a haraka on it. Second one is going to be when the ra has a sakin on it. So if it has a sakin on it, then that means we have to look at the letter before it. So the letter before it is either going to have a fatha or a kasra. Fatha, dhamma, or kasra. So number 1, if the ra has a sakin and before it is a letter with a fatha or a dhamma, it will be read full mouth. If the ra has a sakin and before it is a letter with a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. Now even this number, the second portion of number 2, this one, this has 3 more exceptions to it. And this is a little bit harder, it's a little more deep into the tajweed. For right now, I feel that it's suffice to know that if the ra has a sakin before it has a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. And if it has a sakin before it is a fatha dhamma, it will be read full mouth. So example for the first one, yarji'una. Now in this you'll notice that this ra has a sakin on top. The one before it is a ya, it has a fatha on it. So this follows the first one. If the ra has a sakin before it, ma qabl mutaharrik, and it has a fatha, then it's going to be pronounced full mouth or empty mouth? Full mouth. Now we look at the next one. Yurja'una. Now this ra has a sakin, before it is a ya and has what type of haraka? Dhamma. And dhamma follows the first one, fatha dhamma. You notice fatha and dhamma are usually combined together. Usually they have the same rules and the kasra has the same rule. So yurja'una. I gave this example 2 days ago as well for the kasra. So the ra has a sakin, before it there's a kasra now. This is going to pronounce full mouth or empty mouth? Empty mouth. Why? Because there's a kasra before it. Fir'auna. 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 This gets a little bit hard because usually we think the ra is always going to be full mouth. But the ra is very special. So the ra is going to be full mouth only if and when, and now there's 3 scenarios with that as well. But this scenario we're talking about was a sakin. Before it, if there's a kasra, it's going to be empty mouth. So it's not it's not fir'auna, it's fir'auna. These are some examples for each one. So first one, wa arsala. Now we go over here. Qur'anun. Qur'anun. Now this is a kasra before it, and the ra has a sakin. Yastaghfir lakum. We can't say fir, it's fir. Yastaghfir lakum. Wa dhakkir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And remind, for indeed the reminder is beneficial for those who believe. وَذَكِّرْ وَأَنذِرْ. We don't say وَأَنذِرْ, right? وَأَنذِرْ. Okay, we're going to go over these conditions if we have time after the harakat. So number 3. So the first one was, what was the first exception for ra? What was the first one? Ra has a harakat on it, a haraka on it. What was the second one that we just went over? Be preceded by a haraka. So ra has a sakin. Now this one is the ra has a sakin. Before it, another letter with a sakin, and that letter before that letter with a sakin is going to have a haraka. Now I said there's a very specific scenario, is when you're stopping. When you're stopping at the end of an ayah. When you're stopping because you lose your breath and that ra happens to be there. So the first one, this is a little bit more confusing as well. So the first one is if the letter before the ra sakin, the ra has a sakin, then before that, that letter, we said that letter also has a sakin on it. Now if that letter is not a ya sakin, if it's not a ya sakin, then the letter before that, if it's a haraka with a fatha or dhamma, the ra will be read with a full mouth. If the letter with the haraka is a kasra, the ra will be read with an empty mouth. Now I'll give you examples right over here. So in Surah Al-Asr, a very famous one, Wal Asr. Now the ra is not, you don't say wal asri, you don't say wal asri. When you're stopping, you say wal asr. Right? That ra will be read full mouth. Now why will it be read full mouth? Because first off, it has a sakin on it, right? You're not pronouncing the letter ra. You're stopping, so it's going to have a sakin on it. The letter before it as well has a sakin. The sad has a sakin. Letter before that, what does that letter have? A fatha. Since it has a fatha, it will be read full mouth, that ra. وَالْعَصْرُ. Now this example is with the dhamma. خُسْرُ. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرُ. You don't say khusr. You don't say khusr. You say khusr. That ra will be read full mouth. Example of an empty mouth. Dhikr. Dhikr. You don't say dhikr. Dhikr. It's not dhikr. You see the difference when I say dhikr and dhikr? So the ra it's very, very technical. It's very specific. But each letter has its due justice in how it's said. So this is, again, the ra is going to be stopped upon, right? So this is going to have a sakin on it. Right now there is a dhammatain. What I'm trying to say is when you stop on it, there's going to be a sakin. So ra has a sakin, the kaf also has a sakin, correct? And this letter, what does it have? Fatha, the kasra, dhamma. Has a kasra right here, right? So it's not going to be pronounced dhikr, it's going to be dhikr. Now there's examples over here in Surah Al-Fajr. It's wal fajr. You don't say wal fajr. Fajr ki salah. No, you don't say fajr. You say fajr. Wal fajr. Fin nar. Wal asr. La fi khusr. Min nur. These are all examples for full mouth. Now for empty mouth, it's lidhi hijr. Hijr. So it's not going to be hijr. You see the difference? Hijr and hijr. It's going to be hijr. Wala bikr. Bikr. Now we don't say bikr. It's not bikr. There's no fatha or kasra or dhamma on the kaf itself. On that second letter, it has a sakin. So it's going to be bik, and then you have to make the ra sound at the end. Bikr. Bikr. Does that make sense? Bikr, not bikr. Bikr. Right? So lidhi hijr. Wala bikr. And there's dhikr. Now all of these letters, you'll notice that none of them have a ya. This middle letter, this is what I'm talking about, they don't have a ya on it. When it has a ya, then there's going to be a different rule. If before the ra sakin there appears a ya sakin, there's a very definitive rule for this, no exceptions. The ra will always be read empty mouth. Khalas, end of story. It will always be read empty mouth. If that before that ra sakin you find a ya sakin, stop right there, you know it's going to be read empty mouth. Example of this is khabir. Now you may say that, oh, but this letter before it has a kasra. Then there's another example with the fatha as well. You don't say khair, 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 khabir. Now for the example of sudur, right? Sudur, that letter, that word, ra sakin, sudur, because I'm stopping. Ra sakin preceded by a waw sakin, preceded by a letter with a dhamma on it. So that ra will be read full mouth or empty mouth? Full mouth. Sudur. Over here it's going to be khabir and khair. You guys are all with me? I know it's a lot. The ra is very, very confusing. It takes a while to digest. Best thing is repetition. Try to say all of it through your mind. Right? Close your eyes and say all of the rules. First rule is what? Ra with the mutaharrik. If it has a fatha or a dhamma on it, it will be always read full mouth. If it has a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. Next rule is with the ra with the sakin on top. If the ra with the sakin is preceded by a letter with a fatha or a dhamma, it will always be read full mouth or empty mouth? Full mouth. If the ra with the sakin is preceded by a letter that has a kasra, will be read full mouth or empty mouth? Empty mouth. That's the second scenario. Third scenario, when there's a ra with the sakin, preceded by a letter with the sakin, then preceded by a letter with a mutaharrik, fatha, kasra, dhamma. This is divided into two. Either that second letter before the ra is a ya sakin or not. If there's a ra sakin preceded by a ya sakin, is that full mouth or empty mouth? Always empty mouth. I don't even care what the letter before, if it's a fatha, kasra, dhamma, khalas, that ra will be empty mouth. Now, but if that ra sakin before it is not a ya sakin, then look at the letter before that. If that letter has a fatha or a dhamma, it will be read full mouth. If it's a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. Ra mushaddad. Ra mushaddad is very simple as well. Ra mushaddad, this is a ra which carries a tashdid, that W thing. On top is the double sound. It will have the same rules as the ra with the haraka on top. What was the ra, what the rule with the ra with the haraka on top? If there's a fatha or a kasra on top of a ra, it will be read full mouth. If there's a kasra on the ra, it will be read empty mouth. So if it has a fatha or dhamma, the ra will be read full mouth. If it has a kasra, the ra will be read empty mouth. Example of this is sirran. You don't say sirran. Sirran. Sirrun. Now, do you look at the letter before the ra? Absolutely not. If it has a mushaddad, look at the ra itself. That's all you have to look at. Why is that very important? Because, like how I said in Surah Al-Falaq, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. It's not min sharri. It's not min sharri. Why may someone think it's min sharri? Because there's a ra, but before it there's a letter with a fatha. So I would think that because there's a fatha there, the ra should be read full mouth. But if there's a tashdid, then just look at the ra itself. The ra itself has a what on it? It has a kasra on it, right? So that's why it's min sharri. You don't say sharri. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِن شَرِّ. Sharri. You don't say sharri. مِن شَرِّ مَا خَلَقُ وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. So those are all the letters. So we talk about, where did we start from? We started from the Musta'liya and Mustafila. Just to recap, we'll stop over here. We'll go over Surah Al-Fil after this. So we started with the letters of full mouth and empty mouth letters. How many letters there are that no matter what, they're going to be full mouth? How many letters are there? 7. Does anyone remember the mnemonic device? Remember them? خُصَّ ضَغْطٍ قِذْ خُصَّ ضَغْطٍ قِذْ خُصَّ ضَغْطٍ قِذْ. Try saying that over and over. These are the 7 letters. We should have these on the back of our mind. The 7 letters that will be read full mouth regardless, unconditional. Nothing contingent upon it. It's always going to be read full mouth. Other side, mustaf'ila letters. These are the letters that we always read empty mouth. But they have 3 exceptions. What are the 3 letters? Alif, Lam, and Ra. So we talked about the exceptions with Alif, with Lam, and Ra. Lam is very specific with which word? Allah. Fatha, Dhamma before the lafdullah, the word of Allah, before it, there's going to be read full mouth. If there's a kasra before the word Allah, then it's going to be read empty mouth. Alif, same thing. If before Alif is a letter with a Fatha or Dhamma on top, it will be read full mouth. If before Alif there's going to be a letter with a kasra, it will be read empty mouth. Now we just went over the 3 scenarios with Ra. And then Ra mushaddad as well. So tomorrow, what I want to do, tomorrow there's actually going to be the zakat workshop. So we won't have class tomorrow. Inshallah, the next class will be on Monday. So we will go over idgham, ikhfa, and idhar with mim sakin and also with nun sakin. Idgham, ikhfa, idhar, and iqlab. Now we will begin to read Surah Al-Fil. Let me just pull it up right over here. Okay. Now, Bismillah. Okay. So if everyone can just repeat after me, I'll go over common mistakes. In terms of, and we'll try to also dissect the Ra rules. Very important. We'll try to actually apply the rules this time. I'm going to be asking, what rule applies here? Is this empty mouth and full mouth? And I'm going to ask why. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. This Ra right over here, is that full mouth or empty mouth? In Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Full mouth or empty mouth? This Ra. Huh? Oh, you can see this. Okay. Let me use this then. Does this? Okay, okay. Sorry about that. So over here, this Ra right over here. Full mouth or empty mouth? Why? Why full? Mushaddad. See, why did you think it was empty mouth? Because there's a kasra before it, right? Don't look at that. If it's mushaddad, look at the letter itself. Okay? So the Ra has a mushaddad on top and then there's a fatha. Because there's a fatha, very simple, it's going to be full mouth. So don't worry about this one. Don't worry about this one. Of course, this has its own justice. You're supposed to recite the ha with an empty mouth because it's one of the mustafila letters. But the Ra is going to be pronounced full mouth. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل. Empty mouth or full mouth? Why? Ra has a haraka, right? If the Ra has a haraka, you just look at the haraka on top. Right? If there's a haraka on top, then just look at it. Fatha or Dhamma, it's going to be full mouth. So that's why it's alam tara, not alam tara. Not alam tara, alam tara. Right here. Full mouth as well. This letter, full mouth or empty mouth? Why is it full mouth? Sad is one of those 7 letters, correct? Now you have to be careful with this alif. This is not an alif, by the way, this is a hamza. Remember how I said? Alif doesn't have a sound to it. Hamza, if ever you hear a, e, or u, that's a hamza. It's just hidden over here. It's not written, the hamza. So hamza, is that a full mouth or empty mouth letter? Empty mouth, right? So you can't say ah, you say a, not ah. Like when you're in awe, that's full mouth in English language. But this is a, so it's be else. The a is going to be empty mouth, the sad is going to be full mouth. Very hard. Be else. Okay, we'll go to the next item. أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ. Now which letter in this is going to be the full mouth letter? Dad, right? That's the only one. Alam yaj'al kaydahum. None of them have full mouth. It's only the dad. وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ. Why is this full mouth? The ra is going to be sakin. Before it is a letter with a fatha. Because of that, this is going to be full mouth or empty mouth? Full mouth, right? This one right over here. Full mouth. Why is it full mouth? So the word, the way that these tanweens work, tanween is basically that the letter is connected to a noon, right? Run. So ra has a fatha on top and it's connected to a letter with a noon. The short form, like contraction form, you can say, like you know how do not, contraction is don't. Just like that, tanween is like a contraction, you can say. Instead of writing that out, you can just like put a tanween instead over here. Again, like how we talked about ilm al-rasam, the way the Quran is written, this is very specific. You can't write out the noon if you wanted to. It's not ta, ya, ra, noon. You cannot write that. That's not how the Quran is written. The Quran is written with a tanween instead. Now why am I saying that? Because there are instances where the noon is actually written instead of it being tanween. There's an example in Surah Al-Alaq. It comes in towards the last ayah. I'm forgetting the ayah. Sorry about that. But over here, this is going to be full mouth because there's going to be a fatha on top. Okay? تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ. Why is this? What is this? Full mouth or empty mouth? Why is it full mouth? Sukoon preceded by a fatha, that's why this is going to be full mouth. Tar, not tar. Can't be tarmihim, it's tarmihim. And this one? Why? Fatha on top. Right? This is how we used to do in our class, in Tajweed class. We used to go through every single rule. Now there are loads of more rules. Like why is this alam tara and why is this alam tara? Why don't you stretch it? That's another rule right there. That's a rule, kayfa. Fa'ala, ala, rabbuka. There's a lot of rules that we go through. Right now, we're only the rules so far that we have learned. I'm trying to identify those. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. Now, one thing I very much noticed when reading this last ayah is كَعَصْفٍ. Now, remember what we talked about, the common mistakes. Sad and Sin are very much, people make mistakes with them. So you cannot say كَعَصْفٍ because the ayn, we focus on the ayn a lot for some reason. We like saying that letter a lot. But then we have to do due justice to the letter after it as well, the sad. Correct? So we can't say كَعَصْفٍ. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ. We can't say كَعَصْفٍ because that changes the meaning. كَعَصْفٍ. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. Why is this? What is full mouth or empty mouth? Why is it full mouth? It's one of the 7 letters, correct? خُصَّ ضَغْطٍ قِذ. We'll go over this one more time. This time we'll just read it. Pay attention to the rules, inshallah. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ. وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. One thing we should really notice in the endings of these ayat is we shouldn't make like when we're saying أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ عَلَى رَبِّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ, don't say بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Feel. You guys notice what I'm doing there? Feel. The ya has a very distinct sound, very light. So you have to carry that sound out all the way till the end. You cannot say feel, go all the way up like that. Feel. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Say from بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Like in the last ayah. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. Don't try saying ma'kul, ma'kul. I find that very lazy. We shouldn't say that because that's actually wrong. The waw, does anyone remember the makhraj of waw? What is it? Ji, yeah, impartial meeting of the lips. Wow. How do we see the actual makhraj of a letter? We put a sakin on it. Before it, we add a letter with a fatha, preferably a hamza. Aw. The lips don't meet. Impartial meeting. Aw. And just like that, f, and then there's ab, so there's a lot of, I wanted to go over the makharij as well, but we don't have time for that, inshallah ta'ala. We will stop there. Inshallah, we will carry on with more rules, because I didn't stress the idgham and ikhfa and idhar over here, because this is color coded as well. The reason why these are color coded. So you look over here, this is color coded. These color coded rules, we will go over them tomorrow on today's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, inshallah, and we'll go over them as much as we can. And the important thing is just to put these rules into practice while we're reading Quran, right? We know. Why am I saying Quran, not Quran? It's not Quran, it's Quran. Why? Because the ra has a sakin before it. There's a dhamma. There's a reason why it's full mouth, right? And we know that now. We know why, and we can trace it all the way back to how the letters are. Tajweed is very extensive. Inshallah, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, right? So try to apply these rules when reading the Quran. Maybe read the Quran these last few nights we have with Ramadan, with our guests that inshallah will be leaving us soon. We should try as much as we can to implement, but it's a greater thing to read with Tajweed. If you do not have time to read a lot because you're focusing on your Tajweed, that's better for you. It's better for you to read with Tajweed than to not read with Tajweed. Because the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Read the Quran with tartil. Tartil is a synonym for Tajweed. Read the Quran with Tajweed. وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. We have recited to you with tartil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Furqan. So reciting with Tajweed is going to be 100 times better than reciting it without Tajweed. So inshallah ta'ala we will stop there. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك جزاكالله خير. Inshallah, the brothers are requested. This is rest time, so brothers are requested to inshallah rest up, and then we'll wake everyone up around 6:30 inshallah. And a reminder again, tomorrow will be the zakat workshop after Dhuhr.